Well, Assistant Director, and she is Sarika Verma, Assistant Director in the Institute of Chartered Company Secretaries of India. We welcome you all to this second bi-weekly academic interactive session for the students. The topic for the today's session is tax laws. We have with us CA Sachin Gupta from New Delhi as an expert in tax laws. He is a fellow member of the ICAI, having teaching experience of more than 15 years. He is All India rank holder with a flair for teaching and taxations. He is a visiting faculty of tax faculty of ICSI and ICAI. He has taught over 25,000 students all across the India over face-to-face classes as well as online platform. He is a winner of Best Tax Faculty Award from ICSI. He has been engaged with Income Tax Department for training of income tax personnel. He is the author of more than 100 books on taxations. He has contributed numerous articles for professional journals and delivered over 100 lectures at various forums. So we will welcome you, sir, on this
Thank,
session. Sir, we are starting. We have received so many queries from the students regarding how to prepare the tax law in the forthcoming examination of June 2021. So we will first start with a technical query. I request you to address the query as far as possible during this session. So, sir, the first one query is what is the income tax? How it is charged in the Indian tax laws? So, can you please explain to the students?
yeah, thank you, Govindji and Sarika madam, for the kind words.
Thank you, sir.
It's always a pleasure when the institute calls me up for anything from A to Z. It's such a pleasure, and it's my honor to be as a part of the discussion panel. And whenever there are students, matlab, I just love it. You know, students are my bread and butter. So
Yes.
without them, nothing is possible. So guys, we are going to discuss about tax laws, problems which you are facing or some queries which you have. As far as the first query is, the children which they think it's like, what is taxation? So some people call it a legalized extortion by the government, as they think that is a legalized extortion like a gundagardi tax. But what I feel is taxation is a very noble concept because we all work for our own well-being, and if we don't think about the society, then where will the development take place? So government levies a tax or a fees so that we people can contribute to the nation building, and only by levying one kind of tax, the stomach of the government does not fulfill, because government has defense to maintain and education to follow. So government levies two kind of taxation basically, that is direct taxation and indirect taxation. Direct taxation, we pay the taxes directly from our own pocket. The incidence and the impact is on the same person. Whereas in case of indirect taxes, the incidence and the impact is of different person, so we don't feel the pinch. So you go to McDonald's and have a burger, and you are paying indirect taxes, and you don't feel it because the taste of the burger is too good. And but we need to know who levies direct taxes and the indirect taxes. For that, we need to go to Article 246 of the Constitution. And Article 246 of the Constitution divides the power between the central government and the state government. But GST is levied by Article 246A, because GST is a dual kind of a tax which is levied both by the center and the state. So primarily, income tax is levied by the central government as per Article 246. But under the Income Tax Act, one income, that is agriculture income, that is taxes levied by the state government.
Sir, the next query is what is the period for which a person's income is taken into account for the purpose of income tax? Means the period for which the person is required to pay the tax to the government.
So the best part is that the income tax, government doesn't say that you earn income on a single day and pay the tax next day. Okay. If it becomes like this, it will become such a cumbersome job to pay taxes every day. So government says aggregate your income for a year. And year does not mean a calendar year. Year means a financial year from April to March. So government says aggregate your income for the financial year, keep the income with you, and pay taxes the next year. That is the assessment year. But in some cases, government also tells you to pay advanced taxes. That is also applicable in the financial year. So primarily, it is a combination of some taxes you pay in the financial year itself. That's known as advanced tax, and some taxes you pay in the next year. That is known as self-assessment tax. But you don't have to run on every income and pay taxes the second day. So that at least while earning income, you're not worrying about paying taxes.
Correct, sir. Correct. So the next query is, who is supposed to pay income tax? Means is it leviable on to which person? Like is it what is the category of the person to which the person who is required to pay the tax? Is it
The
defined
term
in the yeah?
the term person, guys, is defined under Section 2, Clause 31 of the Income Tax Act, which includes a natural person as well as an artificial person. So
Okay.
natural persons, you and me, even male, females, and the third gender people are also liable to pay. They are not away from the income tax liability.
Okay.
And regarding artificial persons, you make any kind of an association, you won't be away from the tax net. You have to pay taxes even if it is an artificial body, whether it is a corporate or whether it is a statutory corporation, whether it is a Hindu undivided family. So both naturals and artificial persons both are liable to pay tax. Government will that money government requires from everyone.
Okay. So the next query is, what is the mode that the government is collecting the income tax? Through which mode? Like,
In fact, GST is total online thing, but income tax is still, there are two modes of payment. One is physically traveling to the bank and depositing the taxes. Other mode is e-payment of taxes, where we are interacting online these days. So people doesn't want to go to the bank. They can also pay through online mode, that is called e-payment. But for two people, e-payment of income tax is compulsory for the companies and non-company assessees who are required to get their accounts audited under the Income Tax Act. So the audit persons and the companies are mandatorily required to pay e-payment. Rest of all, you can all voluntarily pay e-payment, or you can go to the bank and stand in the line and deposit the tax. It depends upon your time if you have.
okay, sir. And the next question is, sir, how I will know that how much amount I need to pay as an income tax? Means there is some computation method, I guess, and something, there is a law, like how I would, know.
That for that you need to hire a professional like me.
Correct.
and pay me a hefty fees. Then I'll tell you what is your income tax liability. Otherwise, I will not. I'm just joking. There is a process of computation of total income. In fact, the best part is income tax is levied on income. That means if I rent out my property on a 1 crore rent, that is not my income. I can subtract certain exemptions, deductions, what is allowed. Similarly, I'm a businessman. I sell my goods. I have a computer shop or a mobile shop. I sell the computers for 50 lakhs. Doesn't mean 50 lakh is my income. Government allows you certain deductions and exemptions to earn that income. But mind you, that doesn't depend upon you. You will feel like subtracting all the deductions, all the expenses, but they are limited as per the government. So guys, first of all, you compute your revenues, you deduct the deduction that is allowed by the government, and then you get the juice, the profit, the net amount that is taxable. On that, then you have to apply the tax rates, which are provided by the annual budgets every year, and government provides the slab rates. You might have heard, guys, you might have heard the term slab rates, which are provided in the Finance Act, and every year budget is presented on the first day of February. So the tax rates you get from the 1st of February budget, which is in due course becomes the Finance Act, and there's a process of computation of total income. Whether you like it or not, you have to pay on that income. That is the taxable income.
Okay, sir. Sir, there is a term like advance tax in the Income Tax Act. So the query is raised by the student. So how I would calculate the advance tax payment requirement, and what are their due dates?
So guys, as I told you, you went to a coaching institute to book your classes. The classes might start and the classes might end, and then you will say, I'll pay after the classes have ended. You might not pay the fees, or you might run away because you've taken all the benefits of the classes. So the coaching institute will say, please pay us some advance amount. Pay us advance so that we'll book your seat. Similarly, as I told you, for our examination in June 2021 or December 2021, we have our financial year as 2021, financial year 2021. Financial year, note it down, guys. Every student who is going to appear in June 21 examination or December 21 examination, our financial year, our financial year is 2021. Our financial year is 2021. And that financial year is known as previous year. So there's a synonym. I don't know why they use the word previous year. Internationally, there's a concept called tax year. But in India, our lawmakers wants to complicate the things and they want us professionals to uncomplicate for them. I don't know what's the logic, but they should simply use a word previous. They should simply use our tax year. If Nirmala Sitharaman ji hears to me, I'll simply submit her memorandum. Please change this concept of previous year assessment. It's too confusing for the students. I still remember when I was a student, it took me a month to understand what is previous year, what is assessment. But now, obviously, I'm a taxation coach, so it's become easy for me to understand everything. Your mind opens, your perspective opens. When, as a student, I'll give you a simple thing. You got your exams this year, 2021. Your financial year is 2021. 2021. And that financial is known as previous year. So the question was, you pay advance taxes in the financial year or the previous year itself. And there are 4 installments of advance tax, that is quarterly installments. And before the quarter ends, 15 days before the end of the quarter, you have to pay. So you have to pay by 15th of June 2020, 15th of September 2020, 15th of December 2020, and 15th of March 2021. Because our financial year, as I told you guys, is 2021. And then you have to compute your estimated total income. On that, you have to compute the taxes and pay 15% by 15th June, 45% by 15th of September, 75% by 15th of December, and the 100% of the estimated tax liability by the 15th of March.
Okay. And so the in between, after 15th March, if someone is paying any advance tax, would be considered as an advance tax or a self-assessment tax?
Advance tax, if any tax paid in the financial year is known as advance tax. So whether you pay from 1st of April 2020 to 31st March 2021, they are the due dates in between, but you forget to pay by the due date, it still be classified as advance tax, but the interest element under 234C will apply. Then you have to pay the interest.
Okay, fine. So the next question is, what is tax on regular assessment and how it is paid? Obviously, after filing the income tax returns, there is an assessment process.
And once the financial year ends, then we call up a professional, or we ourselves have the knowledge, then we file the returns.
Correct.
And the returns obviously is now 99% of the cases, the returns are online. Once we file the return, government has a robust checking procedure or a mechanism. They want to know whether basically I tell you guys, under income tax, government presupposes that you people are honest. Presupposes that you people are honest. So there is a concept called self-assessment. You compute the income yourself, you compute the taxes yourself, you pay the taxes yourself, and file the return yourself. Government doesn't poke its nose in between. And for example, in India, before demonetization, the penetration of income tax was just 3 or 4%. Now it has gone to 6-7%. So still 6-7% of the population of India. Just imagine the population of India is about 125 crores and 7% will be approx 10 to 11 crores. These are the only people who are paying taxes. That is because government doesn't enforce income tax in a very strict manner. Obviously, they don't. In Delhi only, the population is more than 1 crore. People might be earning more income, or 50-60 lakh people will be earning income in India, or in Delhi, I suppose. The point I'm trying to say is government lays emphasis on self-assessment, and then self-assessment is found correct, then government doesn't interfere. But if your self-assessment is found wanting and some errors are there or deliberate errors are there, then the scrutiny assessment, bench assessment, income escaping assessment is done. Then the ITO calls upon the assessee, his representative, and then you have to show them documents, and then the final tax liability is determined, and that is known as tax on regular assessment. And then you have to pay the taxes along with the penalties, along with the interest and all.
Okay. So is it regular assessment tax is also paid online, sir?
Yeah, that is also paid online.
Online. Okay, fine. So there is a two term under the Income Tax Act. One is revenue receipt and the second one is capital receipts. So, so can you please elaborate what these two terms define?
Uh, just
And
like
how these all receipts would going to be taxed under the Income Tax Act? Is both would be
just like
taxable or yeah?
yeah, I'll give you an example. Just like a tree, you plant a tree, and every other tree gives mangoes. You know, we all love mangoes. The summer season has started. I'm just waiting for good quality mangoes to come, and I can eat it and enjoy. So the you every other mango comes. So we have planted an asset, and on that asset, every year mango comes. So I sell off that mango. So that is my revenue income, which is like a recurring income.
Hmm.
And you know, I feel now the tree is getting old and the mangoes are not there anymore. So I
Hmm.
cut off the tree and sell it off. And that is my capital income. So revenue income is an income on the asset, whereas a capital income is sale of the asset itself. And government is not kind enough to leave you and tax one kind of income and tax not the other kind of income. Government taxes both income. Yes, there are some exemptions here and there. So on a general rule, we can say all revenue incomes are taxable unless and until government exempts it under section 10. All revenue incomes are taxable until and unless government exempts it under section 10, and all capital incomes are taxable only if they are specifically given under any section. So capital incomes will only be taxable if there is a relevant provision under the Income Tax Act. Otherwise, the capital income will not be taxable.
Okay, fine, sir. So the next question is, what is the difference between gross total income and total income
Uh,
under the
this is
Income
this
Tax
is
Act?
this is just good thing for children. They don't love studying. है ना? Guys, can you just tell me, do you love studying? You can put your answers in the chat box. Sthapak, Yashwasi, Deepshika. So you love studying? Just say, give me your yes, Neil, Prajapati, or you love chatting and all. So just tell me you love studying. Oh, that's so nice. So if some student doesn't love studying, I can give him an incentive. If he starts studying, no, who said no? Rohit. Rohit. देखो जी, you have to study whether you love it or not, है ना? So otherwise you will not be doing CS, the course of CS. You have to love it. So there is no other option. Or do any course. Ganesh is also saying no. So all only for those people who don't love studying, I'll give you an incentive. Every time you study, I'll give you 100 rupees. Now, will you start studying? Yes. Similarly, government says take life insurance policies. Government says take health insurance policies. Government says make FD in the bank. You say no, 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 no. What is the benefit I'll get? Government says you make an FD, you make a health, you take a health insurance policy, you donate some money, we'll give you an incentive. You say, what is the incentive? Government say you have income of 5, you made investment in 2, we'll subtract 2. Then fatafat you make the investment, and then government reduces your investments from your GTI, it becomes your total income. So government says whatever you invest will subtract it from your income and the net amount will be taxable. So before you subtract these deductions, and these investments are given in 80C to 80U. There's a section 80C, chapter 6A of the Income Tax Act, which gives you section 80C to 80U. All these deductions are subtracted from your gross total income. This is, so without subtracting 80C to 80U, it is known as GTI. After you subtract 80C to it becomes TI. So the point is, government wants to start an investment cycle in the economy. Governments want people to save and then invest and to make their capital formation. This, you know, you might have studied in 12th or economics, capital formation, savings, investment, capital formation. This circle government wants to build. Governments want to, what do you call, start the liquidity in the economy. That's the purpose of deductions. So Sam, there are some questions of the children which I can see. Uh, how to get rid of the disturbance? Can I take these questions of the children in the chat box, Govindji?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One question I have, sir, in the chat box. What is AMT or MAT? What is the
Acha,
provision?
you are keeping a tab on the question, so I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
not keep.
I'm keeping a track, sir.
Fine,
No, not an issue.
fine. What is AMT and what is MAT? You know, AMT stands for alternate minimum tax. and MAT stands for minimum alternative tax. You know, students, do you remember I told you under the Income Tax Act, you're not supposed to pay tax on your revenue? Did I say yes or no? And you're allowed to subtract certain exemptions and deductions. Did you got that point? Yes. So when you subtract those exemption deductions, some people get too excited. They sold computer for 50 lakhs and their expenses and deductions of 40, they make it 48 legally. I'm not talking about tax evasion. Some people try to overstate their expenses by tax evasion. I'm not talking about tax evasion, but there are lot of tools into the act which we can use to save our taxes. This is just like uh, fees. There's a coaching institute which has a fees of 10,000 rupees. They give you a coupon of 2,000. So you took your friend's coupon also and applied 4 coupons of 2,000. Now what is the fee left? 2,000. Similarly, government gives lot of deductions and exemptions, but that does not mean you take all the exemption and all the deductions, and that will people do. That why you are giving me now? Why should I take it? That does not mean. I just remember one thing. In fact, I went to out of Delhi by a flight, and I was very young. I was 3 or 4 years old. I remember that was an Indian Airlines flight. That time it was Indian Airlines, and the air hostess came, and there was a bowl of toffees. So I just put my hand into it and took out 20 toffees, and that air hostess caught hold my hand and just gave me 2 toffee. She told that does not mean the ball is in front of you, take all the toffees. It is only 2 or 3, take it. So I felt very bad. Similarly, government says we are giving you exemption deduction. That does not mean you take all the exemption and deduction and reduce your income to zero and your taxes to zero. Minimally, you have to pay certain taxes. And that from that concept led to the introduction of MAT and AMT. So minimum taxes companies have to pay. So your normal tax or minimum tax, and similarly non-corporates have to pay alternate minimum tax, that is a minimum tax. So minimum taxes are there both for corporates as well as non-corporates. So minimum tax for corporates is known as MAT, and minimum tax for non-corporates is known as AMT.
Okay, sir. Sir, as you earlier said regarding some points on deduction, which we deduct from the total income, so to arrive gross total income to arrive at the total income. So one query has been raised: is the personal income can be deducted while computing the total income? Computing the income, personal income. For example, if I am a salaried employed and I have some personal expenses like groceries and all.
Personal expenses, you mean to say?
Personal expenses, yeah.
So we would love to subtract our personal expenses, but the government says any expenses which you have earned for earning the income. There's a difference between expenses after you earn the income. Just like if I say a person is getting married. So what are the expenses? The banquet hall expenses, distribution of gift, and giving money to the panditji to get the fairas done. And but you say, sir, expenses after you get the marriage is not important. Similarly, all the expenses which you earn to earn the income are known as deduction exemption, but government puts a limit on them, because we will try to subtract all the expenses. So first of all, you have to remember 2 things, guys. One, expenses which are there to earn the income first, and secondly, there is a limit on them as per the sections we have to go. For example, the salary people, they are only allowed a maximum expenses of 50,000 rupees. For example, house property income, they are allowed expenses of 30% of their rent, 30%. So whether their expenses are more than that, that is not allowed. So guys, always remember 2 things. One, you have to take care of those expenses which have been incurred to earn that income. So personal expenses goes out of the question. And secondly, even their official expenses or business expenses, they are allowed as per the limit given by the government.
Okay, sir. So the next question is, what is the term rebate as defined in section 87A, and how much is the limit that rebate can be, given relief to the SSC? What is that? Yeah.
Just like you go to the shop and you say, you buy some mobile phone, or say you say, please reduce my price, it's too high for me. And the shopkeeper says, why do you want to get the price reduced? See, I can't afford it. I belong to a low income family. So the shopkeeper might have some soft corner for you if you say like this, है ना? And he might reduce your price of the product. He may, if he's a compassionate person. Similarly, government is very compassionate. We think that government is not compassionate. It's all created by the media. We think that government is not compassionate. Government provides you a rebate, discount from the tax. If you are having a total income up to 5 lakhs, those people having a total income 5 lakhs, they are allowed a discount from the tax up to rupees 12,500. So I call them lower income group people who are having income up to 5 lakhs during the financial year. So the LIG people, though this term is not there in the act, LIG, low income group, but the intention of the government is to provide a discount from the taxes so that we can soften the burden. We can reduce your burden of taxes, and that is allowed up to maximum 12,500.
Okay, and it is applicable only to a resident individual, correct, sir?
Well, there are conditions to it that you should be a resident, whether you are a ROR or RNOR, you should be a resident of India.
Correct. Sir, the next question is, there is a term clubbing provision. So what is clubbing of income?
Clubbing of income, I think give you an example. A gangster was coming from out of India, and he was carrying some contraband items, heroin, charas, ganja. I don't think anybody takes it and should not be taking it. So he looked at the customs counter and there was a lot of checking. And then he was a very smart guy. And another person was also coming from the same country from which he was coming. He just quietly took out the packet from his bag and kept the packet in the other person's bag. And he cleared the custom counter and he was like very happy. And guys, tell me who will be caught now? Other person in whose bag it was there. And the other person was crying. He said, please leave me, it doesn't belong to me. Now, how will he prove that it doesn't belong to me? He got an idea in his mind. He said, kindly look at the CCTV footage. And when the CCTV footage was looked at, then we came to know, oh, that gangster taking out the packet from its bag and put it in other person's bag. Now, what will the government do? Government will do cut, copy, paste. They will take out the packet and say the packet belongs to the gangster. Similarly, we means anyone. We try to avoid our income tax. How do we avoid our income tax? We say this income doesn't belong to me. This income is yours, but it belongs to others. And government also has a CCTV. Now government sees, no, this is your income. You're trying to show it as other person's income. And the government has cut, copy, paste. So government cuts the income from the other person because it belongs to you. And it again becomes taxable in your hand. But if you are caught, if you are not caught, the CCTV was not working at that point of time. Now the person will be for the rest of his life behind the bars. So similarly, under the clubbing concept, if you are caught, then their power is with the income tax officer to add the income to the original person, and to whom you were trying to show, it will reduce from his income.
Okay, sir. Sir, next question is the rental income from subletting chargeable to tax under the head house property or other sources?
For example, I let out my property to Govindji, and Govindji doesn't want to live in the property. And he says, sir, can I let it out to Sarika madam? So then he gave me a call. Yes, sir, you can let it out to Sarika madam. I know her. She's also very kind. So, and you can have the rent. Now the point is, I am the owner of the building. And under the provision of the Income Tax Act, if you are the owner of the building, I will show my income under the house property.
Correct.
Whereas Govindji is not the owner. He happens to be a tenant, and Sarika ji becomes a subtenant. So whatever income he will get, he will show not under the house property, but under the other sources.
Okay, fine. So there is a term composite rent pertaining to letting of the building along with the other assets. Then in such case, how this composite rent will be taxable? Like if we are letting the building along with the facilities like lift and all, security guards and all, then how is it taxable?
So for example, Govindji, again, Govindji, if you don't mind, I'm taking
No,
your
no, sure.
example.
Please go ahead.
So Govindji comes from outside Delhi, and I'm a PG owner. So he comes to my building and say, I want a two-room flat uh, for my residential purpose. And would you be kind enough to provide me the electricity connection, the water connection, and all the facilities? I am new to Delhi. So मैंने कहा अच्छा मुर्गा फंस गया चलो यार, that's so nice. So now I let out the building along with the facilities to him. And obviously, if without the facility, the rent would have been 20,000 per month. And along with the facility, the rent is 10,000 more. It becomes 30,000 per month. This is known as composite rent. This is known as composite rent. Now, 20,000 per month I'll show under the head house property, and 10,000 per month I will show under the head other sources. That is the miscellaneous head or the residual head. So 10,000 will show, in fact, I will show under the head other sources. 20,000 per month I will show under the head house property, and 10,000 per month I will show under the head other sources. But I have an auditorium type of a building, auditorium, in which all the facilities are inbuilt, the AC facilities, the projector. And in that case, I cannot bifurcate the rent. Obviously, I cannot. If somebody says, please give us the building and don't give us the facility that are inbuilt, in that case, the entire rental income I will show under the other sources if it's not my business, or if it's my business and I'll show under the business profession, then house property will not be applicable. So we have to see whether the composite rent is separable or not separable. That
Correct.
depends, and then we have to tax it accordingly.
Okay. So the next question is, what is the tax treatment of arrears of rent? Suppose in this current year, I have some arrears of rent received for the last 5-6 years. So what is the tax treatment if it is received during this current year?
Areas of rent. So again, there was one tenant I remember. I'm just having a story just to tell you. So I let out the property to him 3 years ago. Yes, and it was on a rental income of 5 lakhs. And when he came as a tenant, he was very sharif. We call in Hindi, very ekdam bilkul अच्छा tenant lag raha tha. I got the police verification done and all. But later on, he changed his colors. So when I asked him to pay the rent, he said, I will not pay, Gupta ji, I will not pay. Why? That's my mercy. Go to the court. Yeah, for 50,000 rupees rent, I will not go to the court. The advocate will ask me much more. So I said, please pay the rent. He will say, I will not pay. Now, but to do this kind of tenant, I cannot do hatapai. I cannot beat him up. So what do? I left it to his wish. But later on, after 2 years, out of the blue, he came back and he said, Sachin sir, here's your rent of 50,000. So this 50,000 rent which he gave me was in fact, your question was on areas of rent, but this is a related thing. So this was unrealized rent which I got. So unrealized rent now 50,000 is taxable under section 25A. And similarly, now I'm coming back to your question. Areas is when there is a rent which was not due earlier, because rent has been increased retrospectively from previous year. That again is taxable in 25A. So under section 25A, two kinds of rent are chargeable. One is areas of rent which was not due earlier, and the other rent which I just talked about, which became a bad debt, could not be received, and now it is received. So your past arrears and past unrealized rent are taxable under section 25A, and government gives you a flat deduction of 30%. So if you are receiving areas of 50,000, government says subtract 30%, 15,000, and 35,000 will be taxable in the previous year of receipt under the house property.
Okay, sir. Okay. Sir, the next question is, the transport allowance can be claimed as an exemption by an employee while computing the income under the head salary?
Salary people are very unfortunate people under the Income Tax Act, because they are not allowed much expenses as compared to vis-a-vis, as compared to a business professional person. Under business profession, there are a lot of expenses. Even a simple tea in the office, which you provide to your clients and to your employees, is allowed as deduction, because we think that a businessman creates value for the country. Whereas a salary person, we think his employer is creating the value. You are adding value to your employer. So he is allowed very less expenses. One major uh, type of allowance that is provided by the employer to the employee to meet his expenses on commuting from home to office and back is known as transport allowance. So transport allowance is an allowance given by the employer to meet commuting expenses of the employee from home to office and back. Earlier, before standard deduction was introduced, he was allowed a good exemption of 1600 rupees per month from the transport allowance, 1600 rupees per month, and 3200 per month for the blind, handicapped employees and deaf and dumb employees. But since standard deduction was introduced of 50,000 to the salaried people as a general expense, transport allowance has become fully taxable for those people, who are non-blind, non-handicapped, non-deaf, and non-dumb. So to just summarize it, the exemption is only available to a deaf, dumb, handicapped employee or a blind employee. For other employees, the transport allowance will become fully taxable.
Okay, sir. Sir, next question is what is maximum marginal rate and average rate of tax? Yeah.
Maximum marginal rate is you apply the highest tax rate and you apply the highest surcharge. So the maximum tax rate in a normal manner is 30%, and the maximum surcharge is 37%, and the maximum health and education cess is 4%. So it becomes 1 multiplied by 1.30. So it becomes 1.30, and just you can do the calculation on your calculator also. If I just say to you, on an income of rupees 100, you multiply into 1.30, then you multiply 1.37, that is 30% surcharge, and then you multiply 1.04. So it comes to, just a second, sir, 1.30 nahi karenge, sir. We'll multiply 0.30, 30. 30 multiplied by 1.37, 41.1 into 1.04. It becomes 42.74%. So this is the maximum marginal rate. Maximum marginal rate is applicable in those cases where you don't fulfill the responsibilities. For example, in TDS, you're supposed to be in certain cases, it says you are supposed to be providing your PAN. Otherwise, TDS will be deducted at MMR. So in certain cases, I'm not talking about specific cases. In certain cases, taxes are levied at maximum marginal rate. In case of AOP, BOI also, in certain cases, it's chargeable at 42.74. So more or less, you can say when the government feels that in a particular case, the person should be doing something and is not doing it, as a matter of punishment, we can say 42.74% tax is levied. And what is average rate of taxes? For example, have an income of 10 lakh rupees and I'm a person less than 60 years. The tax will be 1,17,000. So if you divide 1,17,000 by 10 lakh rupees, so it becomes 11.70%. That is the average rate of tax. So in certain cases also the average rate of tax is computed. For example, in case of clubbing and all, some taxes are not paid. So then we levy the average rate of taxes. So in certain cases, average rate of tax is applicable. In certain case of tax, in certain cases, a maximum marginal rate is applicable. There are different sections for different things.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. With this, we have completed the direct tax part query of this student. Now we have some general queries which I need to address to the students. Some query has been raised regarding the which Finance Act is applicable for June 2021 examination. So student, please note that Finance Act 2020, that is assessment year 21-22 or previous year 2021 is applicable for June 21 examination for tax laws executive as well as tax law and practice executive old syllabus also. And the next query is what are the amendments applicable for June 2021 examinations? So the amendments which are made by Finance Act 2020, that is assessment year 2021 and previous year 2021 is applicable for June 2021 examinations. The student may please note that the required update, they should required to update themselves on the relevant notifications, circulars, clarifications issued by CBDT, CBIC and central government on or before 6 months prior to the date of June 2021 examinations. And the updated study material of the tax law paper is already uploaded on the institute websites and is available under the academic corner. So with this, we have completed our general query of the students. So now we move ahead for the next part, indirect tax part. I request Sarika ji to please take over the queries.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Good afternoon.
Sir, Govind ji has already covered the direct tax part. Now the GST and customs is also part of indirect tax. So, sir, our first query is, which we received from the student is, what is goods and services tax?
Oh, great. So goods and service tax is an indirect tax, as I told you before, which is levied by the supplier of goods and the supplier of services. Earlier, before GST, different kind of taxes were levied, different indirect taxes were levied on different things. For example, I'm manufacturing a mobile. I used to levy excise duty. I was selling the mobile in the same state, VAT was levied. I was selling the mobile in the different states, CST was levied. One person, multiple taxes was levied. When the goods used to enter one state, then entry tax or the octroi was levied. So this led to and some taxes were levied by the central government, some taxes were levied by the state government. So this led to the confusion ki bhai, I have to pay X tax, I have to pay Y tax, I have to pay Z tax, and different acts were there. So different acts meant different registrations. Different registration mean different professionals. One profession specializes in one area. So I have to hire different professionals for different taxes, different returns. It led to lot of high cost of accounting and lot of duplicate taxes. Then government decided to introduce GST because it is like all the indirect taxes will come under one umbrella. Then government introduced GST. Now the taxable event is only one. And when you supply the goods or services in the taxable territory of India, you are supposed to pay GST. The best part is now we don't make a distinction between goods and services. Both are liable to GST. Otherwise, in the earlier tax system, services were covered under the service tax. The revenue was with the central government. Goods in certain cases were subject to VAT. So there was a difference between goods and services, but both contribute to the economy of the country, both contribute to the GDP of the country. So that's the reason the distinction has been dropped. Only the distinction is the rates of tax on GST for goods is different and rate of taxes for services is different. But both the formalities, as I'm a service provider, I'm also liable to pay GST. Even a mobile seller is also liable to pay GST. His formalities and my formalities are same. And India has a GST which is a dual GST in which both the center and the state government milkar lagate hain. They come together and levy. So now the intention of GST was one nation, one tax, so that wherever you go, you will be paying only one indirect tax, that is GST.
Sir, our next query received from the students is, what is GSTN and its role in the GST regime?
GSTN is a Section 8 company, as compared to other taxes which are manually and online, GST is a pure online concept. Yes, but physically you don't see any of it, you don't see any requirement to go here and go there. It's all online. In fact, now income tax people are also following the GST steps and it has become totally online. But GST is a pioneer tax because the system is all online. The return filing process is all online. The registration process is all online. The paying taxes is online. The assessment is all online. For that, there has to be a robust infrastructure who will maintain the website, how the website will be updated, how the amendments will be shown. For that, government incorporated a Section 8 company, which is known as GSTN, Goods and Service Tax Network, which is an online network. And it plays an important role because without which the online process will not work. So the whole concept of registrations, filing returns are handled by GST. Lakhs and crores of people are filing returns under GST, and all the IT infrastructure is taken care by GST, that's the Section 8 company. In fact, it is managed by many companies like Infosys, and all the softwares are used, and it was developed by these private companies. Private company means private sector companies, managed by them.
Okay, sir. Sir, our next query is, what is the taxable event under GST?
You know, as I told you earlier, they were taxable even though multiple. You get up in the morning, you are paying X tax. In the afternoon, you were paying Y tax. Now there's a single taxable event under GST, and the single taxable event is supply of goods. So when I manufacture the mobile, I don't pay the GST. No. When I supply it to others, then only I pay the GST. So supply is defined under Section 7 of the CGST Act, but in a simple manner, you can say it's like transfer of the ownership of the goods or provision of the facilities or the services. So if I don't or giving the things on rent or disposal, or simply say you are providing goods and services to the others, whether you are giving on rent or you are selling or selling it off, that's a taxable event. And taxable event means the point at which the liability comes into the picture. Without activating the taxable event, you will not be held liable. Just like you commit a crime, so the crime by just saying anything, crime is not committed. By looking at a person, you don't commit a crime, but you look in a wrong way, and especially to a girl, that is a crime. So that is a taxable event. So in this point also, so the taxable event is the event at which the liability is created, and which supply goods and services in taxable territory of India, the taxable event of GST is created.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, our another query is whether supplies made without consideration will also come within the purview of supply under GST.
You know, the definition of supply is given under Section 7 of the CGST Act. There are three, what do you call, subsection 7(1)(a). There are three, in fact, clauses. I can say it's 7(1)(a), Section 7, subsection 1, clause A, Section 7, subsection 1, clause B, and Section 7, subsection 1, clause C. If your supply comes under any of the three limbs, three parts, it will be treated as a supply. And yes, there are certain cases in which even without consideration, you provide the goods and services, for example, to a related person, or for example to a branch, so it is treated as a supply, because people used to evade taxes in the earlier system by saying it is without consideration. But in the GST, you know, you are allowed credit. So government wants no tax evasion, no loopholes. So even without consideration in certain cases, yes, it will be treated as a supply. For that, you need to study Section 7(1)(a), 7(1)(b), and 7(1)(c).
Sir, what is mean by reverse charge?
Reverse
Kindly
charge.
explain. Yeah, please.
This is like ulti ganga beh rahi hai. In Hindi, ulti ganga beh rahi hai. For example, I provide services to a client. So I will bill him GST 100 rupees plus 18%. He will give me 118 rupees. 118 rupees, he will give it to me. And then I deposit 18 rupees to the government. Then I deposit 18 rupees to the government. So this is known as a direct charge or a forward charge, where the person who provides, the provider, the supplier deposit the GST. But in certain cases, government does not have faith on me. He thinks that Sachin Gupta sir might keep the GST money in his pocket. In that cases, the recipient is told, don't give money. Don't give money. Why? But don't give GST to Gupta ji. He will might run away. So you pay the GST yourself. You have to bear it. In any case, it is going out of your pocket. Why don't you get yourself registered? Thank you. I'm relieved of my responsibility. In that cases, the buyer, the recipient will get himself registered. The buyer, the recipient will pay. He will suffer the consequences. I will enjoy and do banga.
Yes, sir. So, actually, next query is what is input tax credit?
You know, it is just like in I taking example again of a school which has a college. You know, there's a school or trust which has a college. So you studied in a school, and the same school also is having a university type of a college. So when you reach the college, you said, hey, I've studied in your school. Won't you give me some discount or something? Oh, this is our student. He used to make a lot of noises in the 12th. Now he'll again make a noise. So we're not giving you discount. We will charge you more fees. But I'm just giving an example that the same school also has its college. So whatever fees you paid, some concession will be provided to you once you enter the college. Similarly, I bought a mobile for 10,000 plus GST, and I sell the mobile for 15,000. So government will do is all my taxes which are paid on buying the mobile, 10,000 plus taxes, that taxes are known as input tax credit. The taxes which I pay on my purchases. Once I sell it off, government allows to subtract that expenses from my output taxes. So input taxes are those taxes which I pay on my purchase, and output taxes are those taxes which I need to pay on my sales. And I will set off my input taxes from the output taxes and pay the balance. So this is the main concept of GST, where you purchase goods, you purchase services, you purchase capital goods from the same state or any other state. Yes, then you are allowed credit of that.
Okay, fine, sir. Sir, we know that GST registration is very is important and need to do by registered person in GST. So, is there any chance when a person without GST registration can claim ITC or can collect tax?
In GST, only a registered person can levy GST, and only the registered person can claim ITC. So if you are unregistered, you cannot levy GST, neither you can collect GST. For that, you need registration under the GST laws.
So now registration has started, the queries related to registration has started. So can you please tell what is the effective date of registration?
Effective date of, if in GST, there is a concept of aggregate turnover, which is given under section 2 clause 6. So if you aggregate turnover, and there the limits are different for registration under GST. Some for exclusive goods, the limit is 40 lakhs. For goods and services or only services, the limit is 20 lakhs. But in certain states, 10 lakhs. That are 11 special category states which have reduced limits. But out of these 11 also, they are different states which have different limits. So it's quite a complicated mess. But India is a very huge country, and everybody cannot be painted with the same picture. Some states have the fruits of development. Some states were left behind in the development process. So every state has been given some liberty to put the limits. That is as per the GST Council recommendations. And once your aggregate turnover exceeds the particular limit, then you're liable for registration. If you apply for registration within 30 days of the date you were supposed to be, then the effective date will be the date on which you were liable for registration. There are two sections in which you are liable for registration, section 22 and section 24. So section 22 primarily tells you when the limit exceeds, and 24 is compulsory registration. For example, a casual taxable person or a non-resident taxable person, or the ECOs who are collecting tax, TCS under section 52, or the government departments which are deducting tax, their compulsory registration under section 22. So you may be liable under section 22, or you may be liable under 24. On that date, when you became liable, within 30 days, you have to apply for registration. If you apply within 30 days, the effective date of registration will be the date on which you became liable. If you apply after 30 days, then the effective date will be the date on which you were granted the registration.
Yes, sir. But who is a non-resident taxable person in GST?
So, guys, anyone from Delhi in the chat box, let me know. Anyone from Delhi? I'm talking about students, but still, anyone from Delhi? So yes, so we go to trade fair every year in November, from 14th of November to 28th of November. And yeah, Jyoti is from Delhi. So Jyoti, have you gone to trade fair anytime? So Sarika ji, have you gone to trade fair?
Yes, sir, many times before Corona.
Oh, before Corona, yes. And in fact, last year it didn't happen also, I suppose.
Yes, sir, we did.
And what did you buy?
Many art and
from which stall?
I didn't remember, because I used to buy so many things from many stores, stores, outlet, or we can say many.
You know, my wife is mad about Singapore stall. So she always says ki Singapore and wahan se na all the things, because I didn't take her to Singapore. So she told me ki that now Singapore has come to Delhi and I'll buy from the Singapore stall. This is before COVID happened. And the person who sells in the Singapore store is directly coming from the Singapore to sell goods in India. So these persons are known as non-resident taxable persons who come to Delhi for a particular Delhi or any other state on a particular occasion like fairs and exhibitions and don't have a regular place of business in India. So they get themselves registered as NRTP, non-resident taxable person. Sarika ji, there are certain general queries of the student. Will take it afterwards. Like
We have noted
General
it down.
queries we will noting down and we will take at the end of the session. But first we will
Fine.
cover direct tax, indirect tax, and then we will cover the general
Fine,
queries related
fine.
to examination, preparation, and other amendments.
Great.
Sir, our next query is, who is an input service distributor?
Input service distributor. Let me think about a story to guide you all.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, because you are, whether we remember the terms in the GST, but we remember your stories, and it will help in our examination also.
And that is the feedback students also give me, that once they become company secretary or chartered accountant, sir, we remember your Ramlal. You know, my whenever I teach, so Ramlal, the word Ramlal is too common. So I haven't used Ramlal, now I remember him. So let me give an example to tell you what is input service distributor. This is just like so you went to a shop to buy something and you paid advance amount, and you are a father or you are a mother. You went to a coaching institute to take some coaching, and or you went to ICSI. We can use it. That's the best thing.
Yes,
So
sir.
your father came and booked the classes for the student and paid 2,000 rupees. Now the student comes and the fees was 5,000. Balance 3,000 student needs to pay. The student said, my father had paid 2,000, I will pay 3,000. Mega, we don't know who is your father and all. Who is your father? Now somebody say my mother will pay. Somebody will say my dada paid. Somebody said my grandmother paid. But who are we are supposed to remember your dad and mom? Although institute will not say like this. I know that. So you need to get a signed document. You need to get a signed document from your father that he has paid this amount. Then we'll assume that yes, he has paid this amount. So similarly, guys, it might happen that, as you know, I'm a chartered accountant. I've got an office in Delhi. So, and I've got another office in Madhya Pradesh. Assume. And in the Madhya Pradesh office, what do I do is, all my partners sit down and we plan how to go about and do our practice. So guys, under GST, only the Delhi office will be registered. Because from offices or the premises from where you provide taxable supply, that offices are registered. The Madhya Pradesh office will not be registered because from that place, we are not providing any taxable supply. But we got a very big audit assignment. I got a very big audit assignment. And we need to hire certain other company secretaries or chartered accountants for that. And we need to pay them certain amounts. You know, it happens, we have to outsource certain work. So they will also charge some amount from us. So the Madhya Pradesh office paid for all those services because that is our head office. Now the point is, when those chartered accountants were paid by the Madhya Pradesh office, for example, 1 lakh plus 18%, 5 lakh plus 18%, all the input taxes which the Madhya Pradesh office paid is allowed as credit. But the problem will be, Delhi government will say, why will we allow you the credit? So the Madhya Pradesh office will be registered as under the category of input service distributor. If you can break it down, input service tax का distributor. Input services ली है क्योंकि सर्विस प्रोवाइड करनी है. जैसे भैया खाना बनाने के लिए you require raw material. For a service provider, the input services are the raw material. That the input service tax will be distributed by the Madhya Pradesh office to the Delhi office. If they are distributing rightly or wrongly, so they will be compulsorily required to be registered under section 24. The Madhya Pradesh office will be compulsorily required to be registered under section 24 under the status of input service distributor.
Yeah. So our next query is, what is taxable supply?
What is taxable supply? Taxable supply is a supply which is taxable.
Very good answer, sir. But sir, for point of examination.
So taxable supply is a supply which is covered under section 7, which is covered under section 7. So Or you can call it a taxable supply on which GST is levied. So what I can say is taxable supply means taxable supply of taxable goods and services in taxable territory of India. So that will be the right question. In fact, GST is to be levied when supply is taxable, supply is covered under Section 7. Goods and services are taxable, they should not be exempt. Taxable person should be there, he should be registered. And taxable territory of India should be there. So 4 T's should be there. So taxable supply is a supply which is covered under Section 7 of goods and services which is taxable, which is done by a taxable person in the taxable territory of India. If all these things happen, then GST is applicable. So if only taxable supply needs to be given, just say supply covered under Section 7 done by a taxable person of taxable goods and services in the taxable territory of India.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, our next query is, what are the different types of supplies under the GST law?
We again, that is 71A, 71B and 71C. Import of services, supplies to, supplies to branches and to distinct persons, agents and principals, and, even using the official goods for personal purposes. So the definition is vast, and for that, if students need to have a detailed understanding of Section 71A, 71B and 71C, which will give you approx 8 to 10 cases where it is treated as a supply. But the government says it is a supply, we have to assume it is a supply. No choice is with you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sir, now question is composite supply. And what is composite supply under GST?
In the college exams, we don't study for the year. At the end of the year, there is a passport or kunji or Shivdas. You remember those? I remember in my CA days, because the CA used to take up the entire time studying about the CA syllabus, and we used to have less time. Shortcut. We always look for shortcut. In GST, maintaining the accounts, claiming the credit, issuing the tax invoices, it takes a lot of burden. It gives lot of burden to the person. So government is again helping you out. Government is giving you a shortcut. Government is saying, if you want to pay GST and don't want the confusion, you can come in the composite scheme. Composite scheme is under Section 10 of the GST Act, in which we said don't levy GST in the bill. Don't levy GST in the bill. Don't collect GST, but deposit GST. Don't levy, don't collect, but how will you deposit? Then government say pay out of your own pocket. Arey Baba, this scheme is bad then. At least it was better if we collect and pay. No, out of your pocket you have to pay only 5% or 6% or 1%. So you're having a turnover of 1 crore, because there's a limit for different states. 1 crore, 6% is 6 lakh rupees. You pay 6 lakhs from your pocket. If you have a good margin, if your margin is 2 or 3% only, then obviously 6% will be too high. If your margin is like you earn on a 1 crore 20 lakhs, by paying off 6 lakhs, you don't have to claim the credit, don't have to deposit. So the best part is your returns will be yearly. People have returns which is monthly under GST, and the sales return is there, then the composite monthly return is there, but you have to file the return yearly up to 30th April of the next financial year, GSTR 4. But the taxes you have to pay is quarterly in GST CMP 08. So you have to pay taxes quarterly and returns yearly. So we want you to be in the GST, and you don't want the GST liabilities or the what do you call procedures. So this is the shortcut. This is just like under the Income Tax Act, there is a section 44 AD in which presumptive taxation is there. Don't maintain books of accounts, don't get them audited. It is a shortcut way of paying income tax, 44 AD. Similarly, under the composite scheme, it is a shortcut way where you can be in the GST without worrying about the compliance burden. Your voice is lost, madam.
Sir, what is mixed supply?
Mixed supply is, have you eaten a Haldiram mixture? Sarika ji, have you
Yes,
eaten
sir,
Haldiram
many times.
mixture? So it contains what chivda, it contains dry
Peanuts.
fruits,
Yes.
peanuts, yes. So it is all combined together. Or if we eat khichdi, do people eat khichdi when our stomach is out of order? So we eat a khichdi so
With
that we
curry.
become set. So a mixed supply is you come to a coaching institute. I all and we say we provide you head massage and we'll provide you manicure pedicure along with it. You say, are you crazy? I go, no, no, no. It is just to keep you healthy. And there's a gymnasium also. And the composite fees is 1 lakh rupees. So whenever more than one goods or more than one services are combined together, that is a mixed supply. Acha, provided we bill it separately, we say this is different, we are billing separately, then that's not a problem. But we are billing it one as single amount of 1 lakh rupees for the teaching and for everything. So that becomes a mixed supply. And if, for example, you go to a hotel, so food and the water heater facilities are already that becomes a composite supply. So composite supplies more than one service, more than goods which are ordinarily combined together. For example, you go to buy a car, so insurance and the upholstery and the music system is generally provided by the vehicle manufacturer along with the car. So composite supply are the things which are ordinarily provided, and mixed supplies jabardasti jod dena, which can be separated and which can be independently supplied, but they are jabardasti or which are not provided regularly in the ordinary course of business. And the tax treatment in the case of mixed supply will be the highest GST applicable on a particular supply. For example, coaching has a GST of 18, I'm assuming, and manicure has a GST of 28. Then on the entire 1,28% GST will be levied. But in case of composite supply, the main supply GST will be applicable on the entire supply. That is the point.
Yes, sir, we have discussed about composite supply, mixed supply. Can you please tell something about the time of supply?
Time of supply. Yes, time of supply. Time of supply. Just a second, Sarika ji, 1 or 2 messages are there, so that caught my attention. Yeah. So, तुम्हें देखा तो प्यार हो गया. You have heard this line, guys? I know it's not meant for you these days. You people should be studying. Sir, आप क्या समझा रहे हो बच्चों को? No, I am not. Love at first sight. Love at first sight. तुम्हें देखा तो प्यार हो गया. Love at first sight. So when is the time to feel that, no man, I love this person? There's a particular second, particular time, which now your life has turned. Now you cannot live without that person. So similarly, under GST, there's a contract, then the goods are supplied, then the goods are delivered, then the invoices are issued. So the point is, unlike income tax is paid on yearly basis. So entire incomes during the year are taxable. But GST is a transaction-wise tax. GST is a transaction-wise tax. Every transaction has a different, maybe a different tax rate may be applicable because it changes from every month to another month. It can change. So for that purpose, or give you another example, a crime was committed. So the first thing the judge will find out, when is the time of committing the crime, because on the basis of that time the judge will decide the punishment. So similarly, under the GST, we need to find out the date on which supply is deemed to be provided. Maybe you have delivered the goods, no payment has been received, no invoice has been issued, but we'll assume that GST is liable. So when you become liable under the GST, when you come under the GST umbrella, or it is the date of taxable event. Date of taxable event. The taxable event is the supply. But when did supply take place? You committed the crime, but the judge will find out the date of crime, and the date of taxable event is time of supply, which is given under section 12, 13 and 14 of the GST Act. And when I say the GST Act, it means the CGST Act for the center And for states also, there will be corresponding provisions. Under the UT GST, there will also be the corresponding provisions.
So, sir, our next query is, what is the value of taxable supply to be adopted for the levy of GST?
Value, income tax. Guys, tell me on what amount income tax is to be paid in the chat box. Tell me on what amount income tax is to be paid. I told you, if you are attentive enough, you might know on what amount income tax is to be paid. Yeah, tell me on what amount income tax needs to be paid. It is the total income. It is the total income. Jayant Rao, very good. So total income is the very good. Shrishti, Siddharam, Prachiti, 2 lakhs. From where did you get 2 lakhs? So the point I'm trying to say is, it is computed on the total income, not the gross income. Gross income minus 80C to 80U, then it becomes the total income. Similarly, under GST, there is a amount on which GST is to be levied, and that is your gross amount. Yes, the gross income which you are saying under the income tax is applicable for the GST. It is the consideration for which I provide my services, I provide my goods. That has certain inclusions and certain exclusions. What are all to be included, what are to be excluded, that is given in section 15. So guys, for valuation of supply, you need to go to section 15. On a summarily sense, we can say, on a summary sense, I can say it is the consideration or it is the transaction value. It is a transaction value for which I supply my goods and services if the price is the sole consideration and the buyer and seller are unrelated. If these conditions are not fulfilled, then we go to the valuation rules under CGST rules 2017. So we find out the transaction value, which is the price. If the consideration is not price, if the buyer and seller are related and price is not the sole consideration, then we disregard the transaction value and we find out the value as per the valuation rules.
Sir, please tell something about the e-ledgers, cash ledger and ITC ledgers in GST.
Under GST, everything is online. As I told you, under GST, just a second, Sarika ji, you have to give me a minute. Under GST, everything is online. Yes, guys, under GST, everything is online. Primarily, your output tax minus input tax and remaining is the tax payable. Let's take an example. Your output tax is 1 lakh. Write it down in your registers. Your output tax is 1 lakh. Your output tax is 1 lakh. You subtract your input tax, that is 80,000. Now tell me, how much tax you need to pay? A very difficult question. Yes, this is one of the most difficult question I have ever asked on national television. 1 lakh is your output tax and 80,000 is input tax. What is the tax payable? Sarika ji, what is the tax payable? Very difficult question. I don't think you will be able to answer.
Explain in detail.
So Sarika ji needs to go back to the school, and Sarika ji ko hum so students are saying yes. Sarika ji, students are better than you.
Sorry, sir. Actually, I am student, so I want to take all your knowledge to me. So that's why I didn't give answer.
Achha, I know you are joking. So 20,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees is the tax payable. Fine. But in GST, there is nothing called physical. There is no physical ledgers. There is no physical cash book. There is no physical account. I have to check my online accounts, online ledgers. So my output tax, bilkul sahi. Shubhajit Das, Sarika Agarwal, Chandni Kukreja, Jayant Rao, everybody is right. I think Sarika ji, that was you. No. So guys, my output tax liability of 1 lakh will be reflected in the electronic liability register. That is an online account, electronic liability register. Write it down, electronic liability register. my input tax of 80,000 online, I'll log in with my username. That will be, I can check it out in the electronic credit ledger. That 80,000 will be reflected in the electronic credit ledger. Now my 1 lakh liability of the electronic liability register will be debited from the electronic credit ledger, electronic credit ledger. I will debit. Now, how much tax is payable? 20,000. That 20,000 I need to pay in cash. Cash does not mean physical hard cash. That 20,000 I will deposit through online method in my electronic cash ledger. Electronic cash ledger. Yes. NEFT, RTGS I can also use. That 20,000 will be debited from the e-cash ledger. So guys, your output liability will be reflected in the electronic liability register. That 1 lakh needs to be paid either by the ITC or by the cash. ITC, I will debit the electronic credit ledger, and for payment of balance 20,000, which you also calculated everyone rightly, that will be paid by electronic cash ledger. And that cash ledger will be also reflected online once I deposit the amounts in that. So they are basically three ledgers which are online: electronic liability register, electronic credit ledger, and electronic cash ledger.
Sir, our next query is, who needs to file return in GST regime?
Who needs to file return in GST regime? Who is registered? The persons who are registered needs to file returns, but they are different returns like GSTR1, GSTR2, GSTR3. Some returns government has discontinued because every person was required to file a sales return in GSTR1. Every person was supposed to file a purchase return in GSTR2. Then the GSTR3 was a consolidated return. So the point I'm trying to say is every person who's liable to register is liable to file return. And some returns like GSTR2 has been discontinued. GSTR3, which was a monthly return, is still a monthly return, has become GSTR3B. So it is quite complex. So students, what I'll request you is, first of all, you need to study the theoretical sections, and then you need to study the practical time limits. But what I feel is in the exams till now, practical time limits are not being asked because every time they are being changed because of corona thing or something. So even in the annual returns of financial year 18-19 still the time limits have been extended. So first of all, you need to go to the theoretical dates, make a table for that, and then you find out the practical dates. Practical dates are not being generally asked in the exams. So in a simple manner, person who is required to file or a person who is registered is liable to file return. Many cases, the return for input service distributors are also there, non-resident taxable person or their dates are different. Some people are required to file by the 10th of the next month, some people by the 13th of the next month, some people by the 20th of the next month. The composite dealer, the return has been made yearly now. He can file it by the 30th April of the next previous year, next financial year. So it has become quite complex, and I cannot blame government for it because it takes time and new taxes come in. So government is also like making adjustments so that people cannot, or people should feel less pain.
Sir, our next query is, what is custom duties and types of custom duties?
When in the old times, a person used to come from the another kingdom, a trader type of a person. So he used to bring lot of gifts for the Raja, for the king and his queen, so that he feels happy. When he felt happy, then he allowed the trader to sell his goods in his kingdom. And since that time of kings and queens, this custom duties continue. Now earlier it was in goods and services, and now you have to pay monetary amount. So once you bring goods from outside India, the importer has to pay a lot of taxes to the government. In a way, this is one to please the government of India, but to please the government of India means government gets the revenue, one thing. Other is we levy the duties to protect the domestic industry. We levy the duties to protect the domestic industry also. So we don't want China to flood our markets. You can see how badly our manufacturing sector has been impacted. Now, because of this corona, government has realized and they are putting lot of duties. So import duties or custom duties or export duties are levied under the Customs Act. So when a custom duty is levied on import, we call it import duty. And when a custom duty is levied on export, we call it export duty. Though export duties are less because it brings exports bring foreign exchange from India. We only levy export duties when there is a shortage or domestic supply. We don't want goods out of India. We levy export duty. Otherwise, government doesn't levy export duty. But the import duties are levied to protect the domestic industry, one, and to give revenue to the government. Now, once I'm talking about imports, there are approx 5 to 6 import duties which are levied under the Customs Act, which has different purposes, and many of them have been abolished, like CVD and SAT, countervailing duties and special edition duties. But where GST is applicable, they have been abolished. But where GST is not applicable, guys, GST is not applicable on two goods, primarily petroleum products and alcoholic liquor for human consumption. So when these type of goods are imported, again the CVD and SAT will be levied. Anti-dumping duties are still levied where the goods are being thrown into India at throwaway prices. They are brought into India. Yes, they are brought into India at cheap prices. So anti-dumping duties are levied. Protective duties and safeguard duties are also there. In fact, IGST is also there. Social welfare surcharge is also there. So the import process has become quite complex. They wanted to simplify things, but they end up in messing things. But you can't do anything about it because India is a vast country and government needs a lot of revenues to safeguard the interests of the poor people. So you can't complain.
Sir, tell me, sir, please tell something about duty drawback.
Duty drawback is once you import the goods, and you export them out of India as it is, or using in the manufacturing process, then you export it back. So primarily they are two sections, 73 or 74, if I'm not mistaken, on duty drawbacks, or 74 or 75. There are two primary sections in which you bring back the goods come into India and exported them as it is. The 90%, 98% of the duties are given back. But in case you get the goods into India and you use them in the manufacturing process, and again the manufactured product goes out of India, then you are given the duty drawback of the import duty. So basically the point is, goods come into India, you pay import duties, and the same goods, they leave the Indian shores back, so they are not used in India anymore. So government gives you the duty drawback. Drawback means refund. So you are allowed refund of those duties. So in a way, again, there are complex provisions for that. And there are 3 or 4 sub items are whether you export the goods as it is without using for any other purpose, or you use it for your personal purpose, then you export it back, or you use it for your manufacturing process. Then we have to find out the FOB value of the exports, free on board value of the exports. Then the duty drawbacks are given at a percentage of FOB value. But again, there are a lot of conditions for that, in which I think the scope of problem class will be too less to explain all these things. But on a broader sense, duty drawback means refund of the duty which you pay on inputs or the purchases from outside India, because these goods are ultimately again exported out of India as a matter of incentive to the exporter, so that he can reduce his cost. And sell more goods out of India.
Sir, can you please explain calculation for GST with the help of simple example?
Calculation of GST with the help of simple example. Yes, I can.
Please, thank you, sir.
So guys, just confirm whether you are able to see my whiteboard. So Sarika ji, are you able to see my whiteboard? Thank you. Thank you. So calculation of GST with the help of a simple example. GST calculation is very simple. In fact, I am Mr. SG. And I supply toys I purchase the toys. I'm not manufacturer, I'm a trader. I am a trader. So I buy toys for 10,000 rupees plus 12% GST. So I'm not bifurcating GST. If you know, then we can say 6%. I purchase from the same set CGST and 6% SGST. So this comes to 600 and 600. So it becomes 11,200. If I purchase this from another state, then guys, that 12%, yes, that 12% will be, tell me, if I buy it from another state, I'm a person from Delhi. I'm buying from Delhi. If I buy it from UP, then IGST will be levied. Yes, great, Siddharam. Very good. Then obviously I will levy IGST, or in fact, the seller will levy IGST. My margin, my profit margin is 50%. Yes, and I supply them in Delhi only. I supply them in Delhi only. Can you compute the invoice price for me? Invoice price. मैं कितने का बेचूंगा? For how much will I sell it off? Guys, what will be my cost of toys for me? Tell me. Cost of toys. What will be my cost of toys? Will it be 11,200 or 10,000? Tell me. Will it be 10,000 or 11,200? बहुत बढ़िया. Very good. It will be 10,000. 10,000. Plus, because I will get the credit, then I will add my margin 50%. That is 5,000. It becomes 15,000. Then, guys, I will add my GST. That is 12% GST. So I suppose that will be 15,000 into 0.06, 900. Then I'll apply 6% CGST, 900, and 6% SGST, 900. And this becomes my invoice price, becomes with GST, will become 16,800. Will become 16,800. Guys, now you compute this is my input taxes. Guys, this is my input taxes. Input taxes. Taxes which I've paid on my purchases. Taxes which I've paid on my purchase. Which will be reflected in which ledger? Guys, which will be reflected in which ledger? I need your answer in the chat box. This will be reflected in which ledger? This input taxes. Electronic credit ledger. This will be reflected in my electronic credit ledger. So I'm integrating. This will be reflected in my electronic credit ledger. Once I upload the details and everything. And this output tax liability. This is my output tax liability. Guys, this is my output tax liability, which I've levied on my supply. This is my output tax liability. This is my output taxes. Acha, this will be reflected where? Tell me in which ledger will it be reflected? Electronic liability register. Electronic liability register. Great. Now I need to pay off my liability. I can debit by the electronic credit ledger. So now setting off. Input tax from output tax. Now, what is the output tax I have? Guys, CGST I have. and SGST I have. And what is my output? GST of CGST 900 and have input tax of, output tax of 900 for SGST. Now I'll set off input taxes. I have credit of CGST. Yes, guys, I have credit of CGST. You know, CGST credit has to be used only against CGST. That is 600. It cannot be used against SGST. In fact, before using the CGST, I have to check, do I have IGST credit? If IGST credit is there, then first of all, IGST credit has to be used. Then I see whether I have SGST credit. Yes, of 600, and SGST has to be used against SGST. You know, you have to go through section 49, 49A, 49B, and rule 88, A and B, whatever it is. You have to go through all these things to know. And then guys, your GST payable is 300 for CGST, and this you need to deposit. Yes, online you need to deposit in the electronic cash ledger, and then it will be debited from that to CGST and SGST, and your liability will become C. Hanji, Sarika ji.
Thank you very much, sir, for this explanation. Now I request my colleague Govindji to please take general queries related to this session.
Thank you, Sarika ji, for presenting the query relating to indirect tax before the faculty. Sir, we have received 2-3 more queries. It's a general query, like what is the strategy like for scoring good marks in the tax law paper raised by the students?
Strategies is to, it has two elements to it. One is knowledge, another is confidence. To score good marks, first of all, you need to be having a sound knowledge of the taxation paper. And sound knowledge means the concept should be very strong. You know, what we do is we try to cram the things. As you know, I also, whenever I get the opportunity by the ICSI to teach, so whenever I am called by the ICSI, so I teach the basic concepts. Because it's very important to know the concepts. Concept is the king. So if you have rectified the concepts, you will always get confused. In my last 15 years or more teaching career, I've never, opened any kind of a book to teach because I've learned the concepts. So once you learn the concepts, then you are able to answer with confidence. So first of all, you need to stick to the basics. And you find out now, obviously the time is too less for you to go to the basic if you haven't learned the basics. Second element is the confidence. I've seen people with lot of knowledge not getting good marks. I've seen people with less knowledge with full confidence getting good marks. So first of all, if you have the time to get the knowledge, to learn the concepts, go back to the 10-year papers, see what kind of questions are being asked, practice sample papers, practice mock tests. So this will give you a sense where do you stand. And still, if you have less time to study now, or still, but I feel 2 months are still lot of time to study. Second thing that will give you good marks is the confidence that even if the circumstances are against you, even if you're not feeling well in the paper, you overcome your feelings, perform to the best. You know, Chak De movie you might have seen. In 60 minutes, Shah Rukh Khan told they got 60 minutes. Whatever you did or whatever you did not do is not important. What is important? 60 minutes. So similarly, you get 3 times 60 minutes, you get 180 minutes. Because I remember when I was a student, I used to get nightmares in the exam. I used to always spoil the paper. I only cleared my CA because my knowledge was too strong, but my confidence was very weak. Yes, I gained in confidence only after I became a chartered accountant. So what I recommend is you need to have 80% or 75 to 80% knowledge and 20% confidence. And for knowledge sake, guys, you need to practice a lot of questions and you need to put yourself in that situation. Just put a voluntary time limit of 30 minutes and try to solve 30 questions in 30 minutes. And then check your answer with the MCQ. There are a lot of scanners available in the market. Last 10-year papers are available in the market. You can go through them and try to do in a simulated environment. Then the problem is in a school, in a college, there are a lot of internal exams. Monday test, Sunday test, pre-term, post-term. So we are all prepared for the final exam. And unfortunately, in the professional exams, we study and directly sit on, just like you understand how to press the clutch and you learn driving and you are given the car. And 110% the first day you sit in the car, you're going to bump the car. And this happens with us. So that is the reason to score good marks. First of all, your base or your knowledge should be very good, because specifically if the paper is OMR based or MCQ, concepts are very important, because they're asking questions. Instead of asking questions from here and there, small line might be asked. What is the limit for this? So if you haven't gone through each and every detail with a bird eye view, you will not be able to answer. And people in the professional exams, again, though the answers are subjective, but the point is the concept is the key. And secondly, you need to build up your confidence, and confidence obviously comes from practice. So these are the two things which are non-negotiable for getting good marks. Otherwise, you might be lucky, you might get good marks once or twice, but not more than that.
Correct. Rightly said, sir. I request all the students to have a clarity on the provision instead of mugging the provision for the forthcoming examinations. So, sir, the next question is how to do the time management for writing in the text, or like there is 100 questions and 3 hours are allowed to the students to write in the examinations. So how they,
So Govindji, you've answered the question yourself. 180 minutes, 100 question. So every question there is 1.8 minutes for you.
Yes, sir.
So approximately 2 minutes for every question.
Yes, sir.
And what I'll say is, I'll give you another very good tip for the OMR paper specifically. Out of these 100 questions, start solving those questions which you feel. You divide the question paper into 3 parts. Part A, B, C. That not tearing of the answer sheet A, B, C. No. You mentally divide into 3 parts, A, B, C. Part A will be those questions for which there is no doubt in your mind. You solve those questions. Don't go by the serial number.
Correct.
Study 1, don't know, leave it. Study 2, don't know, leave it.
Yes, because there is a negative marking. Yes, sir.
So you only solve in part A, 1 hour, the 3 hours now. So in the first hour, you solve only those MCQs which you have no doubt upon, no doubt. And there will be approx 30 to 40 essay MCQs for which you think that you know it. The problem is, if you don't follow this approach, you might go serial wise, and you will be attempting wrong questions, and you will get some fear in your mind of failing. So in order to overcome the fear, first solve those questions, 40 questions. Look at 1. No, I don't know. 2nd, I don't know. 3rd, I don't know. 4th, I know. Solve it. 5th, I don't know. If on the face of it, look at it, read it. If you feel that you don't know, मतलब वो क्वेश्चन सॉल्व करिएगा जो देखते ही समझ आ जाए, which you know. In the second 1 hour, you solve those questions for which application of mind is required, for which you think, oh, I have to calculate. Then in the third part or the third hour, you solve those questions which you don't know. So what is the problem is, we try to solve those questions in the first hour which we don't know. So there we get the negative marking. And once we solve those questions, we get caught up, and then we solve the question which we know, then we do them wrongly because the fear and all the uthal puthal has gone into your mind. So the first hour, my friends, solve those questions which you know, which you have no two views about it, which doesn't require any calculation. Second hour, solve those questions which you think that you can do, and there will be at least 60 to 70% of the paper you have done in 2 hours. And you will always clear the exam and all the questions, and mind you, there will be approximately 25% MCQ which you don't know. People who have prepared for the best also, there might be some questions here and there, so examiner might try to confuse you. Attempt them in the last hour, and even if 20-25 questions you have not attempted, but don't wrongly attempt. If you can attempt, then attempt. Don't wrongly attempt, because that will spoil your questions which you have marked correctly, because 1/4 mark is deducted for a wrong answer. So I hope I have given you ABC analysis of the paper, how to go about it.
Fine, sir. Sir, there is a one query: how much theory question will be asked and how much practical questions will be asked?
How much theory?
Yeah, theory and practical bifurcation. So
I suppose like 60-40.
sir,
If I don't say 50-50, if I can say 60% will be practical and 40% will be theory, this is a general sense.
yes,
Govind ji.
there is no hard and fast rule. It can be upper side or it can be lower side. So students are requested to have a concept clarity on the theory. Otherwise, they would not be able to attend the practical questions. So, sir, a lot of repetitive questions are coming on the same point of view, like the coverage of the syllabus is too vast. So, what is the strategy like to cover within a very short span of time the coverage of the syllabus?
Again, the answer is look at the last 10 attempt papers.
Correct.
And mark the topics of each chapter, from which topics the questions are being asked. So you come from salary and PGBP. I'm giving you a tip, don't tell to anybody. They're not asking any major questions. In CA examination, salary and PGBP is supposed to be the BAP chapters. CS, they are not asking. This is a small tip. Maybe it might reverse. I'm just saying, look at the trend. You know, the COVID is like this now, and you feel, where will it stop? So let it be stagnant for 2 days. Then you can say COVID is going down. Now, how you are speculating? So similarly, trend is your friend. The trend continues until a force comes and puts it down. So similarly, look at the last 10 papers. So go back today, buy a book in the market of 10 years, and for every MCQ, just tick it, or just like this. I just give you an idea. What you can do is, if I'm just showing you the my writing board, what you people can do it is, just a second. Kanji, Govind, just confirm whether you can see my whiteboard.
Yes, sir.
So what you can do is, guys, you make a chapter. There's basic concepts. Are you people listening to me? Confirm in the chat box. Basic concepts of income tax, house property, salary. And you write, yes, thank you, Kartika, Shrishti, Priyanshi, Akashdeep. Great. So this was your December 20. This was your June 20. So basic concept of question kiska aaya tha? You can just make or leave some gaps, or you just leave some gaps, like little bit more gap. I'm just trying to give you an idea which you can do. It will take hardly bits and house property, and write down the topic on which the question was. A basic concepts, tax rate. Okay. House property question was on 25A. So this way, if you make a table, you'll come to know which topics on which questions are being asked in the last 10 attempts. So make 10 columns for 10 attempts, and then you'll come to know out of basic concept, tax rates are being asked only, or definition is being asked. No, in this case, definition of assessee came. Definition of assessee. This is called analysis. You know, in companies, when there's a cut through competition, they make analysis. The next time, house property, no question was asked. No question was asked. No question was asked. No question was asked. So this is unimportant topic. And guys, this will hardly take 2 minutes, or in fact 2 hours. We spent 6 months studying, but we don't analyze. We don't concise. This is called smart work. This is called smart work. And we as Indians always do hard work. I cannot recommend any major book, but Govindji,
Yes.
Textman books, Bharat books, or study material, I think is the best thing.
Yes,
In
sir.
fact,
Yes, sir. Even
study
in
material-
study material, we have also mentioned some reference books also. Student may kindly note a take of this. And for last so many years question paper, student can refer the guidelines answer, which is available at the institute website, which contain the last 4-5 years question paper along with the answer, suggested answers. It is already uploaded in the website of the institute.
So you have to spend a day understanding which topics are being asked repeatedly,
Yes,
which
sir.
topics are not. If, for example, a question has not come on gratuity for last 10 attempts, gratuity under the head salary, why you are studying? If you have, dekho, Baba, if you have time, I'll recommend study everything. But nobody has the exact time, so gratuity questions are not being asked in 10 attempts, then you can take a what do you call risk for not doing the chapter of not doing the topic of gratuity. If provident fund questions are not being asked for last 10 attempts, so trend is your friend. So if it is only, I am putting a disclaimer, if you don't have the time to study everything or you want to revise important chapters, then you can do this. This will really help you out.
Fine, sir. Sir, with this we have answered almost all the queries.
Yeah.
So we express our sincere thanks and gratefulness to you for sparing your valuable time to address the participants of this program and for his words of wisdom, which will go a long way in understanding the concept of the direct taxation as well as the GST part. So I request all the students to please note that the next session in the series is scheduled on 13th of April, that is Tuesday, coming Tuesday. So request to do log in and submit your query in advance. I thank one and all present here. Thank you, Sarika ma'am, also for being a part of this session. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And thank you. And can I share my email ID for the students so they can send some queries? That's possible?
Yes, sir. They have their login ID. They can send their queries in
Achha.
advance. So it will be addressed to in the next session. Yeah.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Thank you, everyone. Love you all. Thank you, sir. Thank you.